Hey everyone, Dave K here today for Marvel Super War, looking at Loki, giving you a Loki review for Marvel Super War. Want to get this one started off by letting you know I'm super excited to play Loki. He's got a lot of potential, and depending upon how you play and what your playstyle is, you may like him a lot or you may find him very, very challenging. He definitely has the potential to be a harder champion to play, definitely requires a lot more skill and focus and expertise in the methods of playing this MOBA and the methods of playing Loki. So let's dive into it and talk about his abilities, what makes him good, bad, strengths, weaknesses, and all the rest of Loki here in Marvel Super War. Loki is definitely a control and a trickster here in Marvel Super War. Some really, really cool abilities to transform into either lane minions or different heroes on your team. There's so many options, so many possibilities for transformations with Loki in Marvel Super War, and you can really throw off your enemy team this way. So it provides you the opportunity to sort of create some confusion, make them unsure as to who is really coming at them or if Loki's involved in the situation. You can transform, again, into whether it's a lane unit or a jungle creature, but you can also transform into an enemy hero. So you may use that, or an allied hero. So you may use that to make them think that someone else is coming after them, and when in reality, it's you as Loki. So really cool to be able to play those mind games and those tricks on other players within Marvel Super War. That's something I'm super excited for, specifically with Loki. Again, can be very, very hard to do if you don't know how to do it, or if you're trying to figure out how to do it just right. He's a lot harder to play and to control that way, but if you can do it right, he could be a lot of fun for sure. Diving into that control piece a little bit more, Loki's got a lot of abilities that help him really control the battlefield. You've got a couple for slow, you've got some freeze there abilities, so a lot of abilities to really control your opponent's mobility, prevent them from escaping a situation, and work with your team to make sure that enemy team is pinned down or stuck in a situation that you want them to be in to ensure that you can achieve victory and win with your team in the round of Marvel Super War. And really, in all, it's that approach with Loki. He has the ability to approach the enemy team in a way that they're just not expecting it, right? He can transform into these different creatures. And we'll dive a little bit more into that first spell, but he can transform, then he can do damage with that transformation, turn into a ghost, and all kinds of cool different things. You can summon a ghost, all kinds of really cool stuff. So that engage, that approach, where he's approaching the enemy team and dealing damage with your allies or by yourself against enemy heroes or enemy units in Marvel Super War, can be really powerful. Again, that ability to slow enemies, to freeze enemies, helps with that engage and with that approach so that you can really maximize those attacking efforts. That being said, some of the weaknesses of Loki, we have to admit, he doesn't really have any good ways to get out of a situation. So although he can approach a battle really well, for him to escape from a battle can present a bit of a challenge. So hopefully, when you're going into those battles, you have your team to back you up and you don't have to worry about escaping those situations. But if you do, you're going to want to make sure you bring Blink or some of those spells that can quickly transport you out of those battle situations, because again, there's no real good escape moves. That being said, continuing to dive into that piece and his lack of mobility there, he's also highly susceptible to losing his targets or getting attacked by highly mobile units. So again, seeing as he can slow or he can freeze some enemies, he can't necessarily really chase them down or chase in that assassin sense, right? He's a trickster, but he's not really the guy in terms of chasing down those enemies and making sure that they are stunned and stuck in one position. Although he can slow and although he can freeze, he's not necessarily the most mobile to be able to finish the job, depending upon how mobile your enemy is. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're playing Loki here. Starting it off with the abilities here, you've got the God of Mischief for Loki's hero trait. Really, really cool hero trait. Ties perfectly into Loki's character. When he dies, he only pretends to be dead for that 10 seconds. You can resurrect yourself with some of that health that you died with and a little bit extra, just to sort of be able to, let's say, walk away from that situation. Maybe your team comes in, backs you up, and you're able to survive that situation since you resurrected yourself. But really, really cool hero trait there to be able to resurrect yourself in those situations where you find yourself maybe unexpectedly dying. It's really cool to have that revival option. For 30 energy cost and a 10-second cooldown, Loki has Illusions. And Illusions is an ability that allows Loki, as we discussed, to transform into that lane unit, or transform into that jungle creature, or into that allied champion, so that you can approach those enemies and really confuse them, and make sure that they don't really understand what's going on in the situation, and can't determine where you are as a hero. So that's something to keep in mind. Make sure you're leveraging this here. After he's hurt, uses an ability, or 30 seconds have passed, Loki will transform into a ghost. And that ghost will again continue to move towards those enemy heroes after it makes contact, or after 6 seconds it'll explode and do some damage there as well. So really cool combo of effects here for that illusion ability. I almost feel like it's multiple abilities built into one. A lot of potential to sneak up on your team, do some damage unexpectedly, transform into a variety of different shapes and sizes and astronomically ghostly forms and that sort of thing. So really, really cool ability illusions. You want to make sure that you have this one early on. That being said, may not be the first one you want to max out level up wise, because it doesn't necessarily get too much stronger with the levels, but to make sure that you have illusion to be able to go invisible and to be able to transform into another creature is very useful. Not the most powerful, not the one to deal the heavy damage with, but it is good for throwing your enemy off and confusing them. For 40 energy and a 10-second cooldown, Loki has Frosty Lineage. Frosty Lineage, where he throws this frozen icicle at these enemies and freezes them for a second, and then after that it explodes, does some damage to those enemies and surrounding enemies as well. So this is that control spell, one of those control spells we were talking about in terms of being able to freeze your enemies, at least for a very short period of time, gain a little bit of control of the board there and of that mobility, again for a short period of time, but it's still some board control, and to do some damage to those enemies. So if you're in a heavy duty situation, not to mention this ability does stack up better and does more damage over time than, for example, your illusions ability. So you want to make sure you're keeping that in mind. Let me freeze this enemy, let me deal a lot of damage to surrounding enemies as well, and do a little bit of board control. It can be a useful spell, but not necessarily the strongest for Loki, or the number one to level up in terms of dealing pure damage to your enemy, and we'll touch on that here in a second. For 40 energy and a 7-second cooldown, Loki has Concussive Beam. Really, really cool effect here. Shoots a beam in a given direction and can slow enemies up to 35% for 2 seconds if they're hit with that beam. Also, if your illusion is present, that ghostly form from that first ability, it will also fire a beam. Both damages will be reduced to about 60%, but you'll both be able to fire that beam. So you'll be able to leverage it in a way where you can slow a lot of enemies. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, as you level up this ability, it really adds on the damage you can deal with it over time. Something to keep in mind here is, again, that damage really grows with this ability. This is one of the first ones, I think, personally, that you want to focus on leveling up early on with Loki so that you can deal that heavy-duty damage and so that you can have a say in being able to deal damage on the board, protect yourself from enemy heroes, and that sort of thing. You want to make sure you have a variety of these abilities, but in terms of really starting to build one up, this makes a lot of sense in terms of dealing that damage, slowing those enemies, and supporting your team in that way. And it also pairs really well, again, with that ability number one, where you can have 2 copies of Loki, that illusion as well as primary Loki, dealing that slow to those enemies as well. For 50 energy and a 60-second cooldown, Asgardian Magic is Loki's ultimate ability, where he channels energy and creates a phantom form in a given location. That phantom form will deal damage and slow enemy units in that location as well. So it'll stun and it'll kind of cycle for a 2-second period of time, kind of funnel down, deal that slow, deal that damage. It does damage on the way in, and it also does a lot of damage on the way out. So something to keep in mind. If you can drop it right in the midst of your enemies and they can't escape that little circle, you can deal a lot of damage with Asgardian Magic, with that phantom form, as it dissipates from the map as well. A lot of potential to deal some damage here. A lot of illusionary forms, which I can really appreciate with Loki. And the ability to slow and control quite a bit, as we talked about earlier. You can see that's touched on here as well. So something to keep in mind. A lot of slowing, a lot of control in terms of the board and mobility, as well as being able to deal some damage and support your team in that way. And so for items, I'm looking at the Cosmic Cube, the Book of the Vishanti, and of course, Loki's Scepter. You want to think about the items that are going to do some energy damage, magic damage, energy penetration, or area of effect damage. Also, you want to make sure you're building at least a little bit of armor for yourself, but really focusing on dealing that heavy-duty damage in an area of effect, as well as that energy penetration, being able to penetrate your enemy's armor and to be able to do heavy doses of damage to those enemy units. So that's something to keep in mind as you're thinking about these items and about these abilities. You want to build these items on that really help you continue to deal that heavy-duty damage. And of course, don't forget some mobility as well, some boots, just in case you find yourself in a situation where maybe it's getting a little bit sticky and you need to run out of that situation. Loki is a lot slower on the mobility, so that's something to keep in mind as well. So we talked a lot about Loki's abilities, his strengths and weaknesses, and how I see Loki as a unit. I feel like he's going to be hard to play, but he might be a really good unit if you like this play style, if you can play this style really well. I'm excited to give him a shot myself. I'm really curious to see if I'm able to play him well. I know he is going to be a little bit tricky for me, but one thing to keep in mind is that blink spell. You may want to bring that blink spell just to be able to escape from those dangerous situations. With limited mobility, with Loki, you want to make sure that you have an escape option. Overall, I am excited for Loki. I think he's got a lot of potential. I'm going to be giving him a shot. I'm going to be trying him, and I think he'll be good, but we'll see how he pans out. And as the game is updated, as these new releases come out, and as changes occur, you may see Loki get nerfed. You never know. He may lose some of that strength and some of the possibilities of abilities that Loki has. But overall, in Marvel Super War, I'm really excited for Loki. Really want to give him a shot. And let me know what you think. Are you excited for Loki? Is there anyone else you want to hear more about or anyone else you're excited to try? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and let me know you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for being a part of the fun with me today. If you haven't already, for more fun gaming adventures, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to stay informed. And until next time, play on. Diving into the abilities, getting it started off here with the hero trait, the God of Mischief? Mischief is right. Yes. For 50 energy and a